I will do another announcement. Again, this is a live stream for people joining now. If I will be live streaming at 6 p.m. GMT plus 2, which is the Berlin time. And if you have any questions, you can leave them here in the chat. I will also have a link in the description so that you can subscribe to my mailing list so that you can send your questions there. Those questions will have priority. As this live stream starts to grow and more people start to join, those questions in the mailing list will have a priority. So if you want your questions with higher priority, feel free to join the mailing list and ask your questions there. And yeah, let's go now back to the question from Messiah, what cause plugins sound like they are distorted in FL Studio? Okay, it's a hard question to answer because there could be several different causes, and it could be really hard to diagnose. It can be strange, but let's try to figure out what's going on in any. So how do you get distorted audio in FL Studio? You either had plugins that add distortion, but if you don't have plugins that have here in the mixer, if you don't have distortion and the sound sounds bad, you can troubleshoot in different ways. So for me, the way I would do it is like I will load other plugins. If other plugins don't have that same issue, I would probably think there's some corrupted in the installation of that plugin. So the second thing I would say, okay, it's not an FL Studio problem. The other plugins are sounding fine. So what can I do next? The next thing is, since I know that the issue is the plugin itself, then I would try to reinstall it, because sometimes it can create some issues. I don't know. It's very rare. I never had any problem with my FL Studio plugins causing sounds to distort, to be honest. But it can also be, if you are using cracked versions, that could also be an answer. It's like it's not the original version, so you'd never know who worked on it. So it could have some strange effects because of that. The second thing that I would try to see is latency, not latency, buffer size, because there are several things that can cause audio to drop, and one of them is the size of your buffer. So how does DAWs work? DAWs, usually they have an audio engine, and that audio engine needs a space of memory to put data, process the data, and then send that data to the speakers or to the audio interface. So what happens when you hit play, what the DAW is doing is that is filling a buffer, or this is what it's called, this memory size, or this size of memory in your system. It's called a buffer. And basically what it does is like it populates that buffer with, let's say, a frame of data, a frame of audio. And then it processes that frame and then spits out that frame through the audio interface or through some other, the speakers or your headphones or whatever. This is a very simple explanation of how DAWs work. And what happens is that you can have dropouts. What is a dropout? If let's say that your audio interface is consuming a buffer of 100, but FL Studio is putting only 50 or 80 or 90. What's happening is that you will have 10% of that buffer that is empty. And this will cause these stutters and this cracking of FL Studio. And it's called, I think in this case, is either an overrun or an underrun. It's what is called when your buffer of 100, let's say, only got filled 80, or you feel 110, and there was not enough time for the audio interface to extract the 100 before you put the extra 10. So again, this is a very simplified explanation of what are DAWs and how DAWs work in terms of audio buffers. That's why when we go here to FL Studio and we go here to audio settings, you see that we have buffer length. This is what is called buffer. A buffer length here, as you can see, we have 1024 samples, 1024 samples. And if we go lower, what can happen? I can actually show you something like that. So let's do 256 samples. Okay, so I changed the size here. Let's put something here playing. Let's see. Let's bring some drums just to give some example. Let's do a simple drum loop. Okay, let's put it 110. Okay, so now let's say that I want to apply some effects here. One plugin that I really like, but it gives me a lot of headaches, is called Movement. Okay. So look now here at the CPU load. This gives some really crazy effects. By the way, let me put here a limiter because this can also destroy my output. Okay, just a small limiter. Okay, so now let me go through some presets here. Let's see if this will. Okay, I have this one. It's consuming 20% of the CPU. Let's add another one. Okay, so this is giving me now a crazy effect, but you can see it's already at 40. Let's add another one. And if I have a project that I'm working with the instruments and all that stuff, this is very easy to reach. Let me now change this. Okay, so now you're starting to see some issues here. Let me add another one. And let's try to max out this processing chart here. You see this crackling? This is what is called underruns. You see I hope it was clear. It was easy to get. I know it's kind of a crazy example, but this is what happens when your CPU is not, or this FL Studio process is not able to fully fill the 100 or the samples here. So this was 256 samples, and we can actually see we had 4 underruns, which means that FL Studio was not able to fill the entire buffer, and the interface said, okay, give me another buffer of audio, and FL Studio was not able to fully fill the entire buffer. And what happens is that we have these crackling noises because a space was empty in that buffer. So let's go now and change this to 1024, which is a higher buffer. But now if I play, if I move this around, now we don't see or we don't hear the crackling. And you can see that the buffer, the processing here never goes beyond 70 maybe, or 60 something, let's say 70. Okay, so this is how you can play around with your FL Studio settings to try to get a different configuration in your audio configurations. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but you can set a different configuration so that you can have a higher buffer and it will have more time to process everything, and it will enable you to not have so many cracks in your system or in our audio. So again, I don't think this answers your question why they sound like distorted. It can be that. It can be also that the output of the plugin is very, very loud and is actually clipping in the output and is sounding distorted. So you also have to be sure that your output never goes above 0. In the specific channel, that's fine, because if it's a 32-bit channel, it will not clip or digitally clip only when it goes to the output, only when it goes to the master channel. So that could be another reason. So it depends. It really depends on the case by case. But I would go about these 2 or 3 options to try to figure out what's going on with the plugin. And you can still do some type checking when you install a plugin. So there's also some other options when you do manage plugins. Let's see, when does this? Yeah, if you can see here, there's also verify plugins, and there's also rescan previously verified plugins. So if you want to refresh your database, maybe there is an error with the plugin. As you can see here, for instance, the labs plugin shows here interrogation point. I don't know why. I could probably change that by clicking, going here, plugin, and changing from effect to synth or whatever. But yeah, you can always rescan your plugins to try to solve an issue. And you can also go here and reload the plugin or refresh plugin properties. But yeah, it's a little bit hard to answer your question precisely. I can give you some points of what I would do to try to figure out why the plugin are distorted in FL Studio. But again, if it's something only for one plugin, it means that that plugin is causing the issue. If it's something that it's general in FL Studio, probably there's a bug in the installation, so you have to reinstall stuff to try to solve that issue. I hope that answered your question. I hope it was helpful in a way. But yeah, that's how I would go about it, trying to solve the question regarding plugins distortion or not working correctly. Okay, thank you so much. Another quick question: are all DAWs have the same output quality sound without any limiter in the mix, or they are like studio monitors? They have specifications on their outputs. Let me think. Every DAW has its own audio engine, but like I did a video a few weeks back, and I was checking the output from Pro Tools and the output from FL Studio. And what I did was I mixed a track or a beat in Pro Tools, and then I go ahead and did the same configurations of EQ and compression in FL Studio with different plugins, with the plugins. So the mix in Pro Tools, I did the native Pro Tools plugins, and the mix in FL Studio I did with the native FL Studio plugins. What happened was that at the end they both sound the same. So I don't think nowadays there's too much of a difference when it comes to the actual output of any DAW. I think all DAWs nowadays, they have all their own. Of course, every engine, every implementation of every DAW is different. But I think nowadays there's no a very big difference that you would say, okay, this sounds like a bit from FL Studio, this sounds like a mix from Pro Tools. I don't think they have that nowadays. So of course, I don't know what's going on exactly in the audio engine, but I can guess. And nowadays, I would say there's no perceivable difference in terms of audio quality, in terms of fidelity. There's no perceivable difference from one DAW to the other. What matters is how it sounds. If it sounds the same and if it sounds good, that's what's matter. So I would not focus too much on that. I would assume whatever DAW you use, it will have a good output. So don't choose DAWs based on the audio quality. Choose DAWs based on your workflow. If the DAW makes you work faster, makes you work better, it gives you more tools to be more productive, I think that's the best options for choosing a DAW. Not the audio quality, the output quality, because that nowadays it's pretty much indistinguishable between them. So yeah. Hi Thomas, did I join late? Yes, you joined a little bit late because I will finish in a couple of minutes. And basically, this is a live stream that I'm doing every Saturday at around 6 p.m. GMT +2, which is Berlin time. I'm based in Stuttgart, so that's the time zone that I'm based. So I will be doing these live streams at 6 p.m. And basically, the idea of these live streams is to get all of your questions here in the chat or in the mailing list, and answer them the best that I can in FL Studio, so that I can help you guys out and have a feeling of what are your questions, what are your doubts, how can I help, be of service, and help you guys be better producers and be better music whatever, engineers, music creators, whatever we call ourselves. And